Antoinette, we're not starting yet, but whenever you're ready to start the meeting, just tell me to call the roll.
Okay, got it. And Jeremy, would you be able to make the co-host? It says that there's disabled participant screen sharing.
So the other account that you're on is able to screen share, but I'll make you both of them co-host.
Okay. Sorry.
We grew some this year. It worked. I actually used it.
Antoinette, I have 6:30. I'm going to start the webinar.
Okay, thank you.
And we can see your screen now.
Okay, awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for attending today. We're going to get started in just a minute. So far, we have 12 folks on the line, so we'll get started with roll call in just a minute. Give folks a couple of more seconds to dial in. Okay, great. Jeremy, why don't we go ahead and get started if you can call roll.
You got it. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to be calling roll for the Housing Committee. If you are a board member but not a committee member, I will see your name on the panelist list and I'll write you down, but I'm not going to call your name. So let's start with Antoinette Martinez.
Present.
Thank you. Genesis Aquino.
Present.
Thank you. Alberto Ortiz Almeida.
Present.
Thank you. Joan Body. Joan Body. Gladys Bruno. Gladys Bruno.
Present.
Thank you. John Fontillis. John Fontillis. Leonette Lopez. Leonette Lopez. John Johnston. John Johnston.
I'm here.
Thank you. Joseph Lara. Joseph Lara. Marilyn Melman. Marilyn Melman. Rovika Raj Kishan. Rovika Raj Kishan. Maria Roca. Maria Roca. John Santori.
Present.
Thank you. Elise Shuck.
Present.
Thank you. Antoinette, roll has been called.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Okay, so thanks everyone for making the time to attend today's meeting. For today, we have scheduled a presentation with the New York City Voluntary Cleanup Program. And we had talked about this during our last meeting. So this is regarding a vacant lot at 179 22nd Street. And we have Shamander Chawla, the Deputy Director from the New York City Office of Environmental Remediation. So they're on the line to talk more about that. But just before we get into that presentation, I do want to mention that we also had scheduled a presentation from the Right to Counsel Coalition, but they had canceled, and they're not able to present today. But they did share informational pamphlets about a resolution that they're looking to pass. So we have information about that we can quickly go over. State Assembly Member Martinez had also reached out right before the meeting. So we're hoping that Marcella will be able to be on to talk a little bit about her housing priorities. And also her office committed that she'll be able to attend the meeting that we're working to schedule on the 28th. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll talk more about planning for the February 28th roundtable town hall meeting regarding affordable housing in the neighborhood and also future engagement. And then at the very end, if there's any other public comments from folks, we can certainly dedicate time at the end to issues that folks would like to raise. But for now, I would like to give the floor to the Deputy Director. Thank you.
Hi, Antoinette. This is Zarka from OER. We might need to unmute Shaminder. He joined in via telephone, so if you can have him unmuted. Okay. Thanks. I believe he joined with that 516 number. Thank you.
Okay, looks like he should be good to go now.
So, this is Mark McIntyre from OER. So who is going to control the slides that we of our presentation?
Very good point. Let me stop sharing my screen. Sorry about that.
Boys, stop it.
Shaminder, you're still muted, according to this.
According to this, he is not.
Oh, great. I'll go with your.
Now he's muted again.
I'll go with your idea.
Let me. I'll ask him to unmute. He seems unmuted to me.
Okay, I'm showing muted, but whatever. Shaminder, are you there?
Let me try promoting him to panelist. I can't promote him to panelist on the phone.
It might be good to merge the audio with the video and the phone.
I'm sorry, Hennessy, I didn't hear you.
No, I see that he's on video, but he's also with the phone. So it might be good to merge both.
That's somebody else who signed in with his pass or individual sign in. So that's why we ask you not to share those. I show him as unmuted.
Yeah, I see that as well. Shaminder, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hennessy, you're correct. I didn't see him on the screen as well. So I have the cell phone unmuted, but
Let me call him. Hey, Shaminder, Mark. Are you on Zoom, or are you on a phone, or what?
Antoinette, Jeremy, I propose that we move, change the agenda a little bit, maybe go, review the right to counsel information, and then we go with, the city's presentation. In the meantime, while they fix, audio situation.
Sure, we can do that. Let me just pull up the slide deck really quickly. Okay, so how this came about for the statewide right to counsel presentation for today was that a representative from the Right to Counsel New York City Coalition had reached out requesting to present. There's legislation that they're currently that's currently on the floor looking to be passed, and they were looking for support. So that's why we had it on the agenda today as a vote. But it looks like they had canceled because it looks as though they had gotten the support from electeds that they needed, and then they reallocated their resources in terms of community presentations. But they did share informational pamphlets with us that will be shared after today's meeting. So the statewide right to counsel legislation, which strengthened New York City's right to counsel law and guaranteed the right to a free lawyer to all tenants facing eviction across New York State. And then just a little bit more about the legislation that's being proposed is that it would cover every tenant across the state, regardless of their income, would cover any legal proceedings that could result in a tenant losing their home, would require that tenants be represented throughout their entire case, not just when they show up to the court. And this would include legal advice, advocacy, and assistance. And the legislation would also require the state to contract with nonprofit legal service organizations to provide right to counsel, and with nonprofit community-based organizations to provide tenants' rights, education, and tenant organizing. So there is additional information, like I mentioned before, that we can send out. But that's all the information that I had on that. I was really hoping that they would have been able to share more today, but unfortunately they canceled. So just want to kick it back over to Shaminder. Are you still having tech issues? How are we doing?
We have a raised hand.
Okay.
Hennessy.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the right to counsel information, and I apologize for the noisy. So yeah, we passed right to counsel in the city of New York in 2017. So, and it rolled out in 5 years. So in 2021, the whole city was able to get right to counsel, right? It was based on zip codes. And first we started with the zip codes that have the most displacement in the city. So now we have full right to counsel in New York City, but we don't have enough funding, and the legal service providers are over capacity. So now we are trying to pass right to counsel at the state level. It will cover the whole state and not just the city of New York. Also, it will provide funding for organizing, because even if you have a lawyer, having a lawyer is just a part of the equation, right? When it comes to displacement and eviction, right? So this bill would provide funding for both legal representation, not only when you are in court, as we have seen many times in court, and that's not so helpful because often the attorneys are not familiarized with the cases, or they just simply don't have capacity, right? So this would allow the legal providers to span that service. And right now in the city of New York, the right to counsel representation is provided at a 200% level of poverty. So a lot of people don't qualify, but it covers a lot of people who are low income and very low income. So it's a great initiative, it's a great legislation. I'm sure our local, I think our assembly member already supports it. Not sure about the state senators. Anyways, I think the committee should support it. I'm biased, I work with tenants' rights, and but I think, you know, that's something maybe we can talk about at another meeting, unless we want to vote today.
Thank you. I have John Santori next.
Hi, I had some questions for Hennessy's or anyone else. So Hennessy's, is the financial support necessary to provide for the attorneys and the other supports? If there is a lack of funding at the city level currently, is it your understanding that if this legislation is passed, there will be adequate funding both at the city level and at the state level?
That's what we're hoping. I mean, the thing is that after the eviction moratorium, so far from January 2022 to January 2023, 4,400 people have been have cases for eviction. They're up for eviction right now. Well, sorry, they have been evicted. So the pandemic has contributed to that. So the legal service providers have been over capacity because of this crisis that just got bigger because of COVID-19. So the state has more funding than the city, right? So we are hoping, I mean, I don't work for the Right to Counsel coalition. I'm just talking as a tenant advocate. This legislation would help in providing and trickling down funding, basically. And also, again, there's funding is necessary for organizers as well, because it's also limited. The city, most nonprofit organizations that provide organizing are getting money only from the City Council of New York. So this will expand that by also getting, hopefully, getting funding from the state.
Can you just, as a follow-up, can you talk about organizing and what that involves? And so when we say that there would be funding for organizing, can you talk about what that means?
I'm sorry,
don't-
I don't mean to
Sorry.
interrupt. Before we continue with this conversation, I just want to check in with the audio issues. Has that been resolved?
No, it doesn't look like it.
Would it be possible for Shaminder to call you, Mark, and then you put the phone on mute on speaker so we can hear the presentation? Would that be something that we could try?
We try, yes.
Okay.
What about resending in an invitation, Jeremy?
Oops, now I can't hear Jeremy.
Maybe to another email.
Because I was muted, I'm sorry. Send him another invitation. Okay, I will try that.
No problem. Going back to John, Antoinette, permission to speak. I'm gonna answer John's question. So John, I forgot I have your question. Something about organizing?
Yeah, I was wondering what the organizing involves, and a part of my related question is, I think of organizing as being something that people do on their own or people do through nonprofits. And so are we saying here that when we say organizing, do we mean that the taxpayer dollars will be used to fund organizations that help people organize? I'm very sympathetic to the reason why that would be necessary, but I'm curious if that's what we're describing.
I believe so. Yeah, I mean that's how most nonprofit organizing organizations are funded, anyways. They are 501c3s and they receive funding from foundations and again in the city of New York City Council.
Okay.
Yeah, but this will spend funding for organizing in communities or buildings that are in distress, where tenants are experiencing a lot of harassment. But I am not, again, I don't work for the Right to Counsel Coalition. I'm just explaining what I know, based on the work that I've done with it.
Okay, thank you.
I see no additional hands up. I've resent an invitation. Hopefully he's able to sign in on that. While we wait, Antoinette, do you want to move on to another part of the agenda?
Sure.
Oh, he just joined, so it might work.
Yeah, let's just give it a second. I don't want to start a conversation and then have to switch over.
Okay, Shaminder, join in anytime you can, by voice if you can, and I'm not hearing you.
Could somebody call him on the phone and speak to him
He
to
just-
ask him?
He
What's
said
going on?
he just joined again and there's no sound.
Yep,
So, what we can do is, I'm going to start, I'm able to start the presentation and Zarka can step in for Shaminder and do the bulk of the presentation. Zarka, you're there, right?
Yes, I'm here. I can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I coordinate with Shaminder today. I'm going to do the first couple of slides and then I'll kick it to you.
so Mark, you're gonna do the screen sharing?
I don't know who's controlling the slides. We could just say next slide as we go through them.
Okay, Antoinette, do you have the deck? Who has the,
I don't have the deck. Does anyone have the deck with them? We can make you the presenter. I don't think it was sent over to.
Wait, but we were just looking at it, weren't we?
no, that was ours.
my presentation.
Oh, so you don't have the, so
If
Wow.
that could be emailed to me, I'd be happy to share.
I don't, let's see. Hold on.
Jeremy, what is your email? I can email that to you right now.
BK07 at cb.nyc.gov. I'll put it in the chat also.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Technical issues, folks.
Okay, it's sent over to you.
Haven't received it yet.
Is it possible that you can start the presentation verbally? And then we can integrate the visuals? Mark and, sorry.
I have the presentation pulled up, but I just don't have the access
I-
to sharing.
Oh, I can allow you to do that.
Okay,
Okay.
great. That would be wonderful.
Okay, That'll save us a little time.
Yeah.
You can share your screen now.
Okay.
You've got it. Great.
Okay.
Okay. Are we ready to go?
I'm good.
Okay.
Take it away.
Can people hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. Let's kick it off. Hi, I'm Mark McIntyre. I'm the director of the Mayor's Office of Environmental Remediation. Shiminder, our deputy, is here as well, but is not able to be heard. And Zarka Naba is also here from OER, and she'll do the technical side of the presentation. We're going to talk to you about a project that is almost enrolled in our cleanup program at 179 22nd Street, 4th and 22nd in Sunset Park. And why don't you move to the next slide, Zarka? Oops. Anyway.
There we go.
Yeah, this is, I just introduced the three people from OER, New York City Department of Health, which we work with on our cleanups, will not be here this evening. I don't think there's a representative from the developer with us either, but I understand Mia Tagliagambe from Holtzmacher, is the environmental consultant, is here as well. Okay. We're the Office of Environmental Remediation, or OER, as I said. We operate the city's voluntary cleanup program. That is a land cleanup program. It is modeled on the state brownfield cleanup program. It's a large program. There's hundreds of sites across that are currently in construction across the city enrolled in the program. OER is an environmental regulatory office. And we operate this voluntary program, which the first point about the voluntary program is it's voluntary. Developers and sites do not have to work with us, but they come to us and work with us because they choose to do so. They see it as an efficient way to move their sites forward. The voluntary program has been in existence since 2010. And what it is really a process of site investigation, the development of a cleanup plan, OER's approval of the cleanup plan, then groundbreaking, then removal of contaminated soil, then the actual construction of the building follows. And at the end, we sign off on that that the remedy called for in the cleanup plan has been achieved. So as the bullets here indicate, our program basically deals with moderately contaminated sites. The more serious stressed sites often go to the State Department of Environmental Conservation. It's based on their brownfield program. We work closely with DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, in the delivery of the voluntary program, as well as the City Health Department, which reviews our remedies to ensure that they're protective of public health. We also, we'll talk about this a little bit later, there's a real genuine measures of community protection and community participation in our program. Next slide, Zarka. So here's the proposed development, 12-story structure, a mix of residential as well as the first floor is going to be retail commercial space. There are 81 total residential units. 25% of those are affordable, and the cellar will be used for parking. That's the proposed development at this property. Okay, Zarka. This is a schematic of the steps that I just talked about in our program. Where we are is the end of the first line, where it says fact sheet 1. We issued a fact sheet which the community board received and extended the comment period for people to tell us what they think of the proposed remedy till February 17th. It was to close much earlier than that, but we extended it for the community board and others to have more time to weigh in. And then the second line is steps that will follow. A decision document which sets forth and approves the remedy plan. And then we send out another fact sheet notifying everybody of the start of construction, which I understand is going to be in early March. And then the remediation takes place, followed by construction, and then a final report. And after we've accepted that report, we issue a third fact sheet notifying people that the project has been successfully completed. So why don't we go on? So Zarka, why don't you take it from here? This is very simply, I'm sorry, let me just do, this is the site location, and everybody here knows where the site is, edge of Sunset Park on 4th Avenue. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Zarka Naba. I'm with OER. As Mark mentioned, I am the project manager for this site, and my supervisor is Shaminder, who is supervising me on this site. So I'll go ahead and talk about the site location and land use on this slide. So we have a 10,000 square feet site in South Slope, Brooklyn. As you can see on the map, the surrounding properties of the site consist of mostly mixed commercial and residential uses. Okay, so historical use of the site. In February 2015, the site merged into one lot. Previously, the site was made up of 5 lots. It is currently a parking lot, but all prior improvements demolished between 65 to 1978. In 1888, it was a residential and commercial 2 to 3 story structure. From 1906 and 1926 to 1951, it was a 4-story residential commercial structure. In 1965, there was a dry cleaner in the northern adjacent property, but there was a fire that destroyed all structures on site and all buildings were demolished. In 1978, it was a dry cleaner, which is no longer identified. And current and historical use adjoining in the surrounding properties, 1979 to 2007, no structures were identified on 5 lots. And in 2003, the site is identified as a parking lot and the surrounding properties remained unchanged. Okay, so there was an investigation that was completed in October 2018. No USTs and buried structures were identified. There were 8 soil borings and 16 soil samples that were collected. Historic fill extends to 2 to 7.
So sorry. Sorry
yeah,
to interrupt you. What is UST? Would you mind when you speak explaining those acronyms?
Sure. USTs are underground storage tanks. So these are storage tanks that are built underground that were historically placed there. Sorry, I should have put the acronyms on the side to explain. Yep.
They basically hold petroleum products. But there weren't any at this, according to this investigation.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Great. So based on the soil investigation, there were low levels of metals detected. There was a groundwater investigation that was performed, and there were 5 monitoring wells and 5 samples. Groundwater samples were taken 29 to 36 feet below grade, and the flowing was from west to east. And soil vapor samples were taken 7, and there were 7 vapor implants. There were low levels of vapors detected, and all were below DOH guidelines.
Department of Health.
Correct, yes.
So below level is good or bad?
Low level is great. High levels would be something else.
Okay, moving on. So this is the investigation. These are the spider maps where we see the soil borings and the soil vapor samples. And I believe this was 2017. These were taken. These are the soil sampling results with the boring depths. These are just more results. This is the groundwater flow map showing the direction of groundwater flow. These are the groundwater results spider map showing the results of the groundwater samples. This is the soil vapor page 1 showing all the results.
Not sure the slides are synced up to your presentation right now.
Okay, where are you right now? What do you see?
This is groundwater results now.
Really?
I see soil vapor page 3.
Yeah.
Now I got that.
Okay. Okay, so you should see remedial action on the page. Let me know if everyone can see that.
Zarka, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Is that okay with the board? Just
I'm
Just
sorry,
briefly,
can we
yeah.
just hold any questions for the end after the presentation?
sure.
Okay, so I will continue. You should see a remedial action slide in front of you. Hopefully everything is synced up. Okay, so there was a RAP prepared, which is a remedial action work plan. The public comment period extended through February 17th. The RAP was reviewed by several agencies. We had New York City Department of Health, New York State DEC, and as per conversations with the environmental consultant, the construction starts January 2023. Okay, so the remedial action remedy is straightforward and incorporates development plan, also covers requirements for community protection, environmental consultant oversight. And this is just a summary, an overview. We have a full excavation, 12 feet to 16 feet footprint, composite cover system, vapor barrier system on the site, the SMP and deed restrictions. And SMP is referred to the site management plan. In terms of community protection, we have the community protection statement that goes out. We have the community air monitoring plan, reporting, which is the daily reports that are submitted to our office. And we have a closure report, which is submitted after construction is completed. And we have the CASP, which is the construction health and safety plan. Okay, these were some of the remedial action plans that were taking place. Excavation to 12 feet across site, excavation to 16 feet for the elevator pits, an estimated 6,300 tons of soil to be excavated and removed from site, an estimated number of trucks on site, about 300. And as per the plans and the RAP, trucks will be properly managed and truck staging will be managed accordingly. And this is a figure of the excavation map. As you can see, the cellar will be 12 feet in depth and the elevator pit 16 feet in depth. And this is showing the site-wide cover system as well as the vapor barrier. These are engineering controls that are put on site. And this is a typical photo log that is submitted to our office in terms of excavation, remedial construction elements where we have removing and registering any encountered tanks. The remedial and construction elements, which are the waterproofing and vapor barrier system, which is placed on site. Importing soil or other backfill as per OER review. And the community protection statement, part of the RAP for all voluntary cleanup program sites. High level of protection for community, which consists of community air monitoring plan, CAMP, odor, dust, noise controls, which are measures to prevent off-site odor and dust nuisance, housekeeping, inspect site every day, clean sidewalk and streets, truck route, limit transport through residential areas, construction health and safety plan for the workers. Community protection, which consists of the community air monitoring camp data for particulates and volatiles. We have 2 stations, upwind and downwind in this photo. Handheld near active excavation. Some of the nuisance controls for the odor, dust, noise. Some more photos for on-site management of soil. We have covered stockpiles, stormwater prevention measures, basic housekeeping, inspecting site every day, clean sidewalk and streets, hosing down trucks and other dust on site. And this is the truck route that was provided by Holzmacher, showing the truck routes for the site. And in terms of reporting, we ask that we receive daily reports and closure reports, which document that the remedy was implemented according to the RAP. And in terms of open communication, as you can see, Mark mentioned earlier, these are the steps that are being taken. So we are going into the remediation construction aspect of this.
Actually, we're still at fact sheet 1, and we haven't approved.
Correct, yes.
The decision document is still in front of us, and then these subsequent fact sheets would go out to the public as well.
Right. Thank you, Mark. Okay, this is the schedule we have. Anticipated start date, March 6, 2023. Anticipated start date for foundation, June 1st, 2023. Anticipated start date for superstructure, June 19th, 2023. And anticipated facility opening date, January 2024.
Wow.
Okay.
And I want to thank you both for jumping into that presentation. I apologize for the audio issues, and really appreciate you all taking the time to create this presentation, for us today. Before we take comments from the public and have a couple of questions asked, I just had a quick comment and a quick question. So for everyone on the line, this vacant lot, just to put it in context, is on 22nd Street and 4th Avenue. And what is being proposed to be built is 12 stories. So just keep that in mind. And then during the presentation, Mark, you had mentioned that there would be affordable housing at the site. Mm-hmm. Is that something that would be through housing available through Housing Connects?
I'm not certain about that. We could find out. It is, the developer told us that 25% of the units would be affordable. I believe he said there's going to be part of it inclusion. It's going to be an inclusionary housing. but we could ask the developer to get back to you if once the apartments were constructed, whether they would be made available through Housing Connect. I think they would, but I just don't know that for sure.
Okay, thank you. And then I see we have a couple of questions. Right now I see Jerry, John, and Hennessis. And then if anyone else has questions, or if you'd like to use the chat, feel free.
Hey, so my question was, when you're going over the presentation and stuff, when you take soil sample, when you guys were testing soil samples and stuff, right? How far did it went down for those samples?
Standard approach would be a sample of the first 2 feet, of the site, as well as its samples taken below the bottom of the excavation. So in this case, we said the basic excavation would go down to 12 feet. So below that would be 12. So the samples would be taken 0 to 2 and 12 to 14 feet below the grade.
So the second question is, right, same thing with water, right? How far do you go down? Because remember, the area, there's a grounded canal and everything, but I don't know how much contamination further down. There's other old factories in those areas and stuff. By the way, the reason I'm asking this, I'm the vice chair of the public safety for CP7.
Zarka, do you know the depth of the groundwater samples? Oops, sorry.
Sorry, I was mute. I believe it was 29 feet to 36, but subject to check.
Actually, Shaminder just sent me a direct message that says 36 feet deep for groundwater samples.
Okay, yeah, they're 29 to 36 feet below grade.
All right, thank you.
Yep, no worries.
And the groundwater, I mean, the results of those displays in the presentation was that the groundwater contamination is very low at this site, so it's not impacted by serious contamination coming on site, or there's no serious contamination of groundwater on, from the site itself either.
Thank you, Mark. I even put my glasses on, so couldn't read it. It was so tiny. So I'll take a look at it later.
Sure.
Thank you.
And you have in the chat, there's a link to our database with Epic, and all of the project documents can be found there, including the investigation report. So you can read through that link.
Thank you. Back to you.
Someone was detected as crazy.
Okay, John Sensori?
Yes, so just to follow up, so was there anything in terms of environmental contamination that was higher than expected, or were these all low levels of contamination, both for soil and water?
They were all low levels: soil, water, and soil vapor. And we don't, before you do a site investigation, you don't really, your expectations are really based on very little. That's the whole point of doing an actual, sinking, samples and probes into the ground to actually do the testing. And this site came up really quite, quite clean, quite, at best, low level of contamination in all three media.
Okay. Are did you say there were petroleum tanks underground?
No, as you recall, a geophysical investigation was done, I think back in 2017, and the results of that is that there were no underground storage tanks, no underground petroleum tanks detected in that investigation. Sometimes what happens is when you actually come to excavate, you might find a tank. Environmental consultant who's there at the time is there to make sure that it's done safely, and if there's any evidence of a spill, that it's reported to the State Department of Environmental Conservation promptly, So we don't expect that to happen, but it does happen from time to time.
Thanks. I just had a few more quick ones. So is there any contaminated soil that's going to be left at the site after the excavation is done?
No, this remedy is going to render the site as clean as the state's highest cleanup standard establishes. So this will be, the aim here is to reach a state of cleanliness that meets the highest state standards for cleanup in New York, here in New York. So that'll be a great accomplishment.
Great. And then what happens to the contaminated soil after it's removed?
It's what happens is that the project will do a separate study of the soil contamination called a waste characterization study. And then if it's contaminated, well, they send the entire study to various disposal facilities. And the disposal facilities take a look at that study and they say, yes, we can take it, or no, we can't take it. So then the project decides where they're going to send the material. We oversee that process and approve material going to specific disposal locations. So most of the material on the site will probably be leaving the city.
And my last question was, you had said at the beginning, Mr. McIntyre, that developers will do this voluntarily because it helps them move their process forward more efficiently. Can you explain what you meant specifically?
Sure. Let's say you're a developer, right? You have a property and you're going to do a development, right? So there are three paths that you can take, three alternatives you can take to clean up your site. One is you can go into the city program, which we're talking about this evening. Another, if you have sufficient contamination, you can go into the state program. Those are government oversight programs where the government tells the developer what to do, approves plans, oversees to make sure the plans are implemented. And the third way, which is you can do it yourself, and you hire an engineer who makes the decisions as to what the cleanup is. Our program is more popular than the state program. We currently have 700 active sites in our program across the city of New York. Why is that? Because our program was designed after model on the state program, but also streamlined based on the experience of the state program. So we're sort of brownfield cleanup 2.0. And we have figured out ways to move sites forward without without any compromise of environmental quality faster than the state program. And to a developer, certainty is very important to them. They say, you got to know upfront. You want to know before you enter the program how long it's going to take and how much is it going to cost. And we make that very clear to developers before they decide to enroll in our program. They appreciate that. And the other thing that's most important of all things that are for a developer is that time is something they do not have. So getting to the finish line 6 months ahead of time, or 6 weeks ahead of time, or 6 days ahead of time is really important. And our program is faster than the state program. So those are reasons why developers choose to work with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have Alberto. You should be able to unmute your line.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. So this question is for Mark. You did mention that instead of developers hiring a contractor or someone else to do this remediation work, does your company, is it, I did see volunteers, so do they have to pay for your services?
They pay a fee. Most of them pay a fee to us for our approvals of their documents. So we approve a cleanup plan. We collect, depending upon the extent of that cleanup plan, a $1,500 payment for our approval. So we are a revenue producing office for the city of New York. And we get paid for our services, that is approving plans and approving final reports.
Got it. And then the volunteering part, how explain to me, how does that work?
Well, somebody mentioned the Gowanus in our conversation tonight. The Gowanus, the bottom of that canal is on the national priority list, the federal Superfund list, right? And if you're responsible for any of the contamination in the bottom of that canal, the government orders you, and EPA is currently ordering what they refer to as responsible parties for that contamination to take certain steps. You have no choice. You've got to do it. Brownfields are not an area where the government mandates outcomes. You can own a brownfield, for example, and leave it in its contaminated state forever. And the government is not going to come and tell you what to do with it. However, if you do want to improve it, you do want to make a new project, build a new building on your property, then you get into the choice of how you're going to do it. Our program is voluntary. No one has a gun to the head of any developer. You must go into the city program. They're there because they want to be there.
Awesome, thank you. I have one more final question. Does the developer then need the remediation report from your company in order for them to move forward with any further development?
Well, first of all, we're not a company. We're part of the mayor's office, and we're a government office. So we're not private in that sense. If we when we, let's say this project is completed, right? It's a very fast construction schedule that Zarka showed us. Finished in June of 24. I mean, that's stepping along. We will, they'll send us a final report. Zarka will review it with Shaminder and ultimately approve it. And when we approve it, we issue a notice to the buildings department, a notice of satisfaction. And that is a critical document for a developer because it allows that developer to obtain a certificate of occupancy. In other words, the building can be occupied. He start generating, revenue from his new building. So that's the critical last step that all developers wish to get to as soon as possible, so they can start, turn their property into an income-producing property.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you, Alberto. Hennessy's?
I have another question. Sorry about the noise. I'm commuting. I'm confused. So, Mark, you said that their participation is completely voluntary.
I'm sorry.
You said that the developers.
Yeah.
maybe I misheard. The developer's participation in this program is completely voluntary.
That's correct.
So let's say that they choose not to participate, they can still construct, right? That's what you're saying? They can still develop the land.
Well, in this case, Zarka, this site has an E designation, correct?
Correct, Mark.
Yeah, okay. So that will get a little more complicated.
I'm just confused because if it's
No.
voluntary, why DOB requires your approval for them to get a certificate? And also, I'm just wondering.
Let
Okay.
me take a stab at that. I don't know to the extent to which your folks on this meeting are familiar with the general process of environmental review.
I'm very ignorant in the process.
Excuse me?
I am very ignorant on the process. Maybe other people know, but I don't.
Okay. So when the city rezones and proposes new zoning for a particular area of the city, there's an environmental review done, and there is the city planning department looks at all the lots that they determine within the zoning area that are likely to be redeveloped as a consequence of the zoning. And there is then a study done as to whether there'll be any environmental impacts if any of those lots are developed. This site has an E designation for what? Hazardous materials. Zarka, help me here. Hazardous materials, air and noise.
This one just says hazmat.
Just has hazmat. Okay, so forget air and noise. So what that means is the zoning, they put an E designation is placed on this property at the Department of Buildings. The zoning then goes through, and some period of time later, a developer comes forward and says, I want to develop this property. They go to the Department of Buildings, and Department of Buildings says, oh, there's an E designation on this program, on this site, excuse me. And they say, we can't give you a building permit. You first have to go to OER, our office, and investigate and develop a cleanup plan, et cetera, to address the environmental restriction that's on the property. So the E designation program is really a mandatory program. However, where, if I want to develop my site and has an E, I got to go to OER and there's no choice if you want to develop. However, what we do at our office is we have the voluntary program, which we've been describing tonight, because this developer, like many, many, many developers, they can satisfy the requirements of the E designation by taking their property through the voluntary program. And that's what's happened here. The alternative for this developer would be just to stay in the E designation program. There wouldn't be as many benefits to that project if he did so. And he made the choice to take it through the voluntary program. So he volunteered to participate in the program we're describing tonight. He didn't have the option, if he didn't want to use the voluntary program, to just do it on his own. He would have to also work with us in our E designation program to do the same steps: the investigation, the cleanup, and the redevelopment. I hope that's clear.
Okay, so he was required to do this because of the E designation.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And he decided to meet the requirements of the E designation program in our voluntary program.
Got it. But they can also choose not to and stay with the E.
That's right. You can choose not to go to the voluntary program, so to forget the voluntary program. I'm going to go
So
to
what?
E. Yeah, but he did.
So my question is, what happens when they choose to stay on the E?
What happens? What?
what happens if they choose to stay with the E destination? Do they get to develop anyways or not?
Well, of course they do. What
So
happens?
why do they get to develop anyways if the city is having this E for them not to develop? I'm just confused at all this. I don't see the accountability part of it.
You don't see the what part?
It sounds like the E is just a worthless letter, or category, because they can either go to the voluntary program or they can still choose not to do that.
I agree. That's what the point I was trying to drive as well.
No, they can satisfy the environmental requirements, that is the cleanup plan, investigation cleanup plan, and remediation in the voluntary program, or they can do it in the E program. And if they choose not to do it in the voluntary program, they proceed in the E designation program.
Got it.
And in this case, just to sort of close the circle, we earlier mentioned that the project aims to achieve a high level of cleanup, what the state would refer to as a track 1 cleanup. If that occurs here, the developer, once the cleanup has been completed, can petition us to remove the E designation. And so if it's a complete cleanup and there's no contamination by state standards left behind, or they meet this very, very high standard of clean, the E designation can come off the property. But that's after all the work is done.
Thank you. So earlier you mentioned that your agency gets paid to approve applications. What does that mean exactly?
What does it mean? No, we don't get rich doing this, I'll tell you that. But because our budget office has to approve the fees that we charge for our services. So ZARCA works to approve the cleanup plan. And we're ready to approve that cleanup plan, or when we're ready to approve that cleanup, we send a fee request saying, please pay this fee, and then we'll issue the notice that you can go get a building permit. But we don't, the fees that we charge for our services are regulated very carefully by the budget office.
No, I understand. I'm just wondering, so they get to pay the fee, then they get a permit for construction? Or where, by paying the fee, do you guys also monitor them after to make sure that they did the cleaning that they were, quote unquote, required to do?
Do we monitor the site after they get the building permit? Yes, indeedy. And the main mechanism to achieve that is Mia, who's on the call at the meeting. She's the environmental professional hired by the developer to ensure that the environmental requirements in our cleanup plan are met and accomplished by the developer. So she will be issuing daily reports to us, as ZARCA said in her presentation, of the progress that's made on a day-by-day basis at the site once groundbreaking occurs. So we rely on the environmental professional to be to ensure that all the folks who are working on the site understand the cleanup plan and implement it properly and carefully. And if it does not occur, Mia has an obligation to alert us to that. If you all, in visiting, walking by the site, after construction starts, see something that doesn't make sense to you, that looks like it's not right, we want to hear from you. And there are phone numbers and ways to contact us. Our phone numbers at the back of the presentation, so that if there's something wrong, we want to know about it, because we want to straighten it out. But Mia, the environmental professional, is really our eyes and ears on the site during the remedial work to ensure that all of the necessary steps are taken.
And Mia is a private consultant, not a government entity.
That's correct. The way this whole process works is developers to deal with us. They don't know enough to deal with us. They have to hire an environmental professional who actually works with us, works very closely with Zarka, overseeing, the investigation. Mia then will sit down and write, up an investigation report. Zarka will review it and approve it. Then Mia will sit down and write a cleanup plan. Zarka will review and approve. She'll work with Shaminder on that. And so back and forth it goes. But the developer needs somebody like Mia because the developer doesn't have the skills to do this.
I understand.
All right,
Thank you.
thank
sorry,
you. And
so-
Mia, I see that you're on the line. Just wanted to give you an opportunity to weigh in or to introduce yourself.
Hi, it's Mia from J.R. Holzmacher. I mean, if you guys have any questions, by all means, I'm here for it. But we will hopefully be starting our waste characterization sampling beginning of March, as Mark has mentioned earlier. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, Mia. I did have one question. Not sure if you would know the answer to this, but would you happen to know if the developer had requested any height increase for this development?
Any height increase?
Right, because it's 12 stories. I was just wondering, I was just curious because this had come up recently with another development.
Antoinette, it's an R8A, which does allow 12-story buildings.
Thank you for confirming. Thank you.
No problem.
It's all pursuant to zoning, the height of the building.
Correct, thank you. Does anyone else have any final questions? Okay, thank you so much, and thanks for being so patient with us as we resolved all the audio issues. Appreciate, Shaminder, you weighing in on the chat and being very helpful to answer questions. Thank you so much, Mark and Zarka. Appreciate you jumping in. Thank you also for extending the public comment period until February 13th. It was originally set until the 6th, but they extended the public comment period to after the presentation today. So if you visit the link that was circulated earlier, you'll find information on all the documents that were covered today. We'll also be asking if you can share the slide deck. And then folks, if you'd like to submit public comment, we'll also have the information circulated to you on how you can go about those steps as well. But thank you again for taking the time today.
Shaminder reminds everybody in the chat that the comment period is till the 17th.
Oh, to the 17th. Nice. Okay, thank
There
you.
are a few more days. Yes.
Great. And so Marcella Matenas is on the line from State Assembly. I know Marcella wanted to have the floor for a bit just to talk more about her housing proposals and other items coming from the governor's office. So just wanted to give the floor to Marcella for a bit before we jump into planning for the meeting on the 28th.
Okay.
So Marcella,
I think OER will bug out.
yeah, thank you so much again.
Okay. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks for your time and attention. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair. I am happy to see familiar faces. I'm coming from Albany. We just started budget conversation, so I don't want to take up too much time because I know there's another date for us to go into things deeper, but just wanting to talk about housing and what's going on. The governor put out her executive budget proposal and around housing issues and around tenants. She's talking about long-term development. That's a big concern. We know it takes time to develop the stuff, and even the things that they are developing doesn't seem to be providing enough affordable housing. We're concerned that she wants to revamp the 421A program. That's really what developers use to have these affordable lotteries that we see in various communities. The problem with that is, again, it takes long, and the income levels to qualify for these apartments tend to be too high for our community. The other thing I want people to remember also is these affordable units that they bring to our community, they're not all coming to us. So even the affordable housing that was built above the library that got us 50 apartments, and the applications that are being processed now for the senior housing on 63rd Street, that's giving us 84 units. We're not getting all 84 units. We're only getting 42. So the community only gets half, and the other half is really open to everyone else. We're seeing that it's costing us about $1 million per apartment, so it's not really working for us. This is why we let it expire, but it seems like it's going to be a fight that she wants to have on this coming budget session. So we certainly need to talk about development of affordable housing. But we need to talk first about what we're going to do and what we can provide immediately as immediate relief as people are still trying to recover from the pandemic. So we're hoping that there'll be a little bit more money for the ERAP. So ERAP was money that the state put aside for folks that are behind in their rent due to the pandemic. There's a chance we can get some money from that, but there's 3 specific bills that we're pushing. One of them happens to be mine. One of them is a good cause eviction bill, and that really gives basic tenant protections to tenants that don't currently have it. And it stabilizes their rent by suggesting a 3% increase or attaching it to inflation. This gives tenants in unregulated units. You know, unregulated units are these private houses or small buildings with 5 units or less, where the landlord can arbitrarily decide how much the rent is going to go up, and there's no defense against evictions. The good cause eviction bill would actually change that. And what we're seeing in our gentrifying neighborhood is, you know, people buying up these houses with the intention to flip them. People have been living there 10, 20, sometimes 30 years without any problems, and suddenly their rent is being doubled and they can't afford it and they're being displaced. We also know that people are having a hard time just paying their rent. So there's a bill to provide a rental subsidy at the state level. This would be targeting people that are severely rent burdened to make sure that they can stay in their homes. But this would also help with folks in the shelter system, giving them priority to be able to come out of the shelter system and find permanent affordable housing. There's also less restrictions. That means that our undocumented neighbors can actually apply for the subsidy as well. And the last thing is the TOPA. That's the bill that I'm carrying. That's the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. So folks know that I've been organizing and advocating in the community, you know, years of starting tenant associations and buildings, getting tenants to learn about their rights and use all legal options to get the landlord to be able to make the repairs. What we see happening is that they then sell the property. Should we pause?
Sorry, does
Okay,
everybody
seems
else
that-
see that in the
I
chat?
think they've been removed from the meeting. Go ahead,
did, but I-
Marcella.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, what that does would give the tenants in a building that's being sold by a property owner the right to make a bid to be able to purchase the building. If they don't want to purchase the building, we can act a non-for-profit organization to come in and oversee the property. So the idea is to be able to keep these affordable units, keep them in the community, keep them affordable, but really give tenants in working class an opportunity to move to the middle class by being homeowners. So I don't want to go into too much details because I know we're going to have another meeting where we can get into more, but I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Cynthia, your hand is raised.
Cynthia, you're muted.
All right, Johnson, sorry, and then we'll get back to you, Cynthia.
Assemblyperson, do you have write-ups on the three bills that you can share with the committee and with the board?
Yes, we can forward some materials on the 3 pieces of legislation. We're working in coalition with Housing Justice for All. They're a coalition of tenant groups, tenant organizations, and tenant leaders. Thank you, Evan. And so we're sponsoring, there's 3 bills, but it's 5 in total, and I can share the information with you, and then we're gonna have a follow-up meeting where we'll get into more details.
Okay. Cynthia, do you want to give it another go?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
I'm so sorry. Anyway, I didn't have a comment or a question. I had my hand up at the end of the presentation to thank you, Antoinette, for this very, very important and comprehensive explanation of what this program is, because I think that it's very vital that people understand the process of housing development. And, you know, in terms of the steps and cleanup is very important, especially if there is a possibility of a site contamination. You know, we have to protect ourselves in every way that we can. But this is one of the best presentations that I have ever been in, you know, witnessed in a housing meeting. And I want to thank Marcella, because her work on the state level to address, you know, like critical issues. Because I remember when I was the district leader, I ran my campaign on affordable housing. And the question back then, this is like in the 80s, was always, what is affordable housing? Affordable to who? And what I'm witnessing is that with all of these developments, you know, they get the 421A program, which I think is extinct now, but they'll have another program to replace it for the developers. And these people make tons and tons of money, and we're given crumbs. We're given crumbs for what they actually receive. And then, you know, after their, after they've exhausted all of their, how should I say, their subsidies and everything, and their investors want out, then they want to make it like not affordable to anybody. So all of these little pieces of housing development is crucial to know. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And I will certainly make sure that all of, you know, my friends and people, that they come on YouTube and watch this program, because people don't know what to look for. Yeah, John asked so many questions that were really, and everybody did. Hennessy's, John, and everybody that participated asked the vital questions that brought clarity to the things that were not understood. So I just wanted to thank you. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Hennessy's, you had a question?
Yes. Assemblywoman, can you explain a little more about, I forgot the language, on the housing plan? The governor's housing plan also addresses zoning for, I think, low density areas. What does that mean exactly? And how can that impact Sunset Park or communities like this one?
So she is proposing to build, and she wants to change the zoning requirements to be able to build in low density. I can say that's not really targeted at the city. That's more targeted at Long Island and upstate. And they're looking at locations where there's transit hubs they want to build. So we're still getting more information. We haven't been briefed on the details of that yet. But I can say that the mayor is certainly talking about rezoning our cities. And so I would very much like the community board and the housing committee for us to start working together because we need to start having a conversation where we're educating ourselves on the zoning, educating ourselves on the process, and then having a community conversation about what we want and what we need so that we can start working on that, because the powers that be have decided that they want to give the real estate industry more money and more tax breaks, and they feel that the answer to the housing problem is just to build. And we know in our community that that hasn't been the answer. We're seeing the developments that are coming up. This community fought so hard to create that 197A plan, but also to make sure that there wasn't any housing development on the waterfront. So we need to start having a larger conversation about all of this and start convening community conversations where we're going to start attacking the issue and really discussing what's needed. I went to Vienna this summer and learned a lot about social housing and the way they build it there. And so we know that we need to build. We know that that's part of the long-term plan, but we as a community need to decide what that development is going to look like and then work toward it. The other thing is, there isn't a lot of land available. So one of the things that we're talking about, at least at the state level, is trying to recruit whatever land the state has and seeing if we can build on that. And so in Sunset Park, the state-owned land that's available is the bus depot. It's a huge plot of land. I don't know that it's fully being executed and used, but that's something that I'm starting to think about, if there's a better purpose or use for that piece of land. But again, it's part of a longer conversation that we have to have, and we need to start soon.
Thank you, Marcella. Just 2 questions. Have you been in contact with the land use committee at all about having these broader conversations?
No, so we're starting to really want to understand what the governor's proposing at the state level, have a conversation with Alexa about what's happening at the city level, but definitely we need to bring this up to the land use committee. And just, the fact that we're here and we're going to be meeting again, I just kind of want to put that out there, because we need to start figuring out how we're going to come together and make these decisions.
Okay, great. And I see Emmett has his hand raised, but I was, and I know you're going to be talking a little bit more about what's being proposed, but at least for myself, and I'm sure others, I get a little confused about what exactly is the benefit of 421A for developers. I was hoping if not you, Marcella, if someone else on the line could just, if they knew where we could find a little bit more information, or that could be broken down a little bit about why that is such an issue.
I can send some stuff.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
I can also tell you a little bit of what I know about the 421A plan, which I understand that that's expired, but something else is going to replace it. This is a form of a tax credit to the developer to assist the developer in I guess, saving money, out of pocket money. And in return, with the 421A plan, then they will commit. That's how we get them to commit to give us the crumbs that they do. Okay. I can't put it any more clearer than that, because if a developer is going to go in there and there's no money and it's only his money, his or her money, and they are developing, how should I say, at will, because they own the property, they, have everything, then, they don't really need anybody, because they could do whatever they want. But if they want to do it to scale and they have more money to do it, then it's a cost saving. It's money that's not coming out of their pocket, because it's a tax credit. So in order to understand any one of these tax credits, because there's many different tax credits, but the 421A plan, which I understand has expired, but I heard Governor Hochul saying that something else was going to replace it. We don't know what it is, but Marcelo will bring us up to date on that when we find out what it is. But yeah, it's a cost saving to them. So that's pretty much, and so they work with syndicators, people that find investors like Enterprise Corporation. There's a lot of different syndicators that bring these tax credits to the investors, and then they sell them to the investor, and the how should I say, the investor then, when they do their taxes at the end of the year, they get all of this money deducted from their taxes. So the investors are not paying what they should be paying, just like, when we hear that we have to tax the millionaires and the billionaires, because like Leona Helmsley said, only the poor pay taxes, I don't know.
you.
I'm an old
Thank you,
person.
Thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Emmett, you had your hand raised before. I was curious if you wanted to weigh in.
I'm sorry, I'm just leaving our office in Albany and tailing outside. I found shelter. Just quickly, we're still going over detail by detail what's in the governor's housing proposal for the state budget. But if I could summarize them in 4 segments or 4 pillars as to what her general idea will be, I would say the first one is revamping her tax exemption program, similar to what the 4121A is. But the concept of it is to address it in a way to help address, quote, slow growth cities, such as Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, in addition to, the existing program in New York City. We believe that's the most dangerous from our office. Secondly, also to what Assemblymember Marcelo Matena said, addressing tax transit-oriented developments in the suburbs, targeting Long Island and county areas. As you know, rezoning laws and in those areas have been pretty historically racist, especially around inclusionary housing. And part of that plan from the governor is to try to introduce a state policy to override the local zoning in the suburbs. The third segment or the third area is revitalizing midtowns in the state, which is like, removing the RAF cap and allow for taller residential buildings and business corridors, which kind of ties more into rezonings and zoning codes. And I think that's the area that the mayor is also starting to align himself more with the governor. The fourth area, it's the concept of fair share, and how it seems that the governor believes that each municipality has the responsibility of creating an X amount of below market rate housing. What does below market rate means? That's a good question. We're still looking into that. But they're looking to mitigate the impacts or burdens of providing affordable housing. And it looks like this policy is also going to be targeting the Hudson Valley, but we're still looking in closer to the budget to get the details of how the budget will address one of these issues. But these are the 4 areas that the state budget will likely address when the governor says that she wants to create 800K new housing units for the state.
Thanks so much for breaking that down. Appreciate it. Genesis, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment a little bit on the 421A problem. And I think Cynthia got it. She explained a lot of what it is. It's correct. It is a tax credit for developers to construct affordable housing. So usually what happens is that they claim that well, first of all, let's start by saying that this affordability is temporary. It lasts about 15 years, right? And usually in a simple way, it is problematic because the landlord or the developer gets to set the base rent. So there's this new building, they get these tax incentives, they save almost, I don't know, millions of dollars. right? In the 15 years that they are in the program, millions of dollars, and they set the rent. Usually the rent, from what I've seen from experienced organizing tenants, is that they set the base rent at $3,000. They can set it at $4,000 or whatever amount they want. So usually it's not affordable for the people that need it the most, and not affordable for the people in the neighborhoods where they usually are using this tax credit or developing, right? So that's the main problem, right? So after the subsidy expires, the apartment goes to market rate. So market rate can go up to whatever amount, we know that. And again, if they couldn't afford the quote unquote affordable rent, they're less likely to afford the rent after it goes to market rates. So that's just a summary of why it's problematic and it's not helpful, right? So all that money that the city is, that the developer is saving, millions of dollars, can be used to other programs. Like right now we are trying to pass HAPP. Marcela has been a champion for that. The Housing Assets Voucher Program, for example, right? It would need money. We need money for TOPA, the Tenant Opportunity Purchase Act. If we would need money for HONDA, the Housing Our Neighbors with Dignity Act, which is to developing distressed buildings. That's where the money should be going, right? And there's a bunch of other subsidies locally where the money could be going, but that's not what is happening. And again, part of the problem is because of who gives funding to these political campaigns, right? We know that the governor is very supportive of that because she receives a lot of money from developers. So she has to, come up with a different version of that. But we are here to say no. I hope you are also against that because it's not going to maintain Sunset Park the way it is. It's just going to keep displacing our neighbors even more. Again, I put a report on the chat. You can read it yourself. It's a report by the New York City Controller's Office.
Thank you, Hannah says. So just a quick follow-up question. So if there is an apartment, a development on Housing Connects, for example, and if that developer had received a 421A tax credit, and was able to have those apartments available. So through the 421A program, those apartments are not affordable in perpetuity. It's only for a certain number of years. And then am I understanding this correctly?
Yes.
And then once it expires, those apartments are able to go to market rate?
Exactly.
I was
Most of them, that's the way that they work. The ones that the Fifth Avenue Committee developed above the library and the 84 unit senior housing, those will be in perpetuity. They'll be affordable in perpetuity.
Marcela, is it, sorry. Is it because they also receive other tax credits?
I don't know. I think it's because they're affordable, they're nonprofit developers, but that was them making it in perpetuity, right? The other 421A developments, a lot of the tax credits that they get are based on how many apartments they create. And so when you go and apply to these, you often see a bunch of apartments that are studio and 1 bedroom and very little 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. That's because they're trying to get as much bang for their money. We've also heard issues about people that leave, the low income people that live in these types of developments don't get to access any of the amenities that the building has, right? Sometimes they have like a separate entrance, and we've seen lawsuits around this. The other thing with the 421A, for example, and the Fifth Avenue Committee is guilty about this because we even debated this in the committee. I'm sorry, at the community board. They developed those 2 affordable housing developments without union labor. And so I don't know if you guys noticed, but this summer, there was a huge inflatable rat outside, right? And that's because they were trying to bring attention as the development, at least the library one, was starting to, finish, and they were starting to bring tenants in. So you know, the point of the tax credit is supposed to be to incentivize the development of affordable housing, but like you've heard between Cynthia and Genesis, we're not getting as much as we're giving, right? Those apartments are costing us about $1 million each. And there's developments throughout Brooklyn, and I'm sure throughout New York City, where they've developed, they don't have people to move in, right? Like all the people that needed the apartments are gone. The apartments, even though they're affordable, they're, you know, for us, they're like market rate, right? So it's not working. I don't understand why we keep giving them money, but you're right, Cynthia, it expired last year. She's very much talking about revamping it because, you know, the government doesn't want to build any. They want to, you know, they want to give someone else money to build it, but they're not doing the work. It's also just, we can't wait for them to develop something. There's people that need assistance and help right now.
Sorry, good. I think it's also important to note that if the developers were already enrolled in the program before it expired, they get to still remain in the program. So it didn't just, you know, all those people who have rent stabilized apartment because of 421A, they didn't just go market rate. Still not paying affordable housing, but they still in the program.
Yeah, so we've
I forgot
seen
to
a
mention
huge
that earlier.
applying before the deadline. And so one of the things that the governor is one of the things that she's proposing is to extend the deadline so more people can apply. So we're waiting, hopefully this week, if not next week, we'll get a deeper briefing on what her proposals are. And I can have that for you guys next time we meet.
Sorry, just to clarify, the extending the deadline for 421A?
So that people can, the time that they have to apply and build. There's supposed to be a deadline. So the application process, like there's no more money. People were applying before that. And so I think this is just her way of trying to like revamp the program. I think last year we almost didn't catch it because she gave it a whole different name, right? So they give us this book and I'm like rummaging through it, trying to find like what her proposal was for the 421A, and we didn't see it. And then somebody else saw the language, but she had to change the number.
I think it was 485W, something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 45W.
Thank you. Thanks again. And then I know we have, so the next item on the agenda is to plan for a meeting on the 28th. And Marcella has confirmed that she'll be able to attend that meeting to talk more about housing with electeds. So we do have time dedicated in just a bit to dive into planning and finalizing an agenda for that. But I did see one final question from Cynthia. And if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop it into the chat and then we can make sure that those get raised up or brought up to Marcella's attention.
My question is not a question. I just wanted to bring a little bit more information because if you guys recall that the apartments that were developed on 6th Avenue between, I think it's a 52nd, 53rd Street, those buildings that were developed by SPRC, they reached a point where what we call in the industry sunsetting. When we talk about sunsetting, we're talking about the end of the tax credit period. And when those buildings were sunsetting and they were going to go market rate, and I don't know how many, there must be like 50 apartments or so in that area on both sides of 6th Avenue. It was Nydia Velasquez that stepped in, and she, I don't know, well, you know, I guess she strong-armed that developer to extend that, you know, affordability for an extra 15 years without the tax credit, okay? Because the tax credit has expired. Marcella, you might remember this. And this is what happens to people that live in a place, they develop this as their community, you know, or they're from the community and they're fortunate to get a subsidized housing, because we're talking about subsidized housing when we're talking about low income, because just because the people are paying less doesn't mean that somebody isn't paying for that. The government is subsidizing the other portion that other people that can't afford to pay would pay. Right, Marcella, am I right? Yes. So I just wanted to say that any project that comes in, we need to understand when is the sunsetting of this program and what does the developer expect to do after that period. Is he going to get rid of everybody that's there? Is it going to go market rate? Or are we going to have to depend on another Nydia Velasquez to save these people? That's all I wanted to mention. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Cynthia. So Marcella, we're looking forward to having you and seeing Emmett on the 28th. We're just going to use the rest of the meeting to plan an agenda and finalize items for that meeting. So you're free to stick around, but I'm sure you all want to get home probably. I also want to acknowledge that there was an attendee on the line, C. Wells. I wanted to say that, you know, we could have bumped them up to panelists in case they had questions, but they signed off. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second. All right, so before we get into this, I just wanted to quickly mention, just see the participants list. Okay, so what I'm noticing is that on the community board, we have a list of everyone who's on the board and what committees they're on. But the thing is that with this committee, we have a bunch of folks that are not on the housing committee joining. There are some folks like that are listed as committee members, but others who aren't. And I noticed that folks, you know, they pop in and out, which is great. But in terms of planning for the meeting on the 28th, I just need like a hard confirmation that, you know, that you're dedicated to helping to plan for this meeting, because what we'd like to do is start a Google group for planning around this meeting. And it would be helpful to, you know, streamline a way that we can communicate with each other planning for this meeting, but it's hard to do it not knowing, you know, who's fully committed. So I see some questions in the chat. Okay, so I would like to just, if you can drop a line in the chat and just confirm that you are basically that you're available to help with planning for the meeting on the 28th. At the last meeting, I'm not sure if you all were on it, we had a conversation about ensuring that we're meeting regularly. So let me just pull up this also. So currently we have a tentative meeting schedule, and these dates are on hold for now. They are flexible, but we do have these dates on hold with the community board. And the next meeting is going to be on February 28th at 6:30. And we had a brief conversation, and during that conversation, it was decided that the next meeting we would have a roundtable discussion or a town hall where basically we would invite our elected officials and give them an opportunity to meet the community, and so that we know who they are, and also to learn more about their housing proposals and their current platform. And John had taken the time to help draft some questions, and we're going to get into that. But if you could drop in the chat. Okay, thank you. Okay, great. All right, thank you for committing. If you're not available, it's fine. I just don't want to, I just want to know who we can expect, the labor of love from. All right, cool. Thank you. I appreciate your acknowledgement in the chat. Okay, so. Okay, so I think a couple of things that we'll need to confirm, and I want to have like a fluid conversation. So feel free to unmute your line, but just be respectful in terms of like, how much time we're taking to speak and making sure that we're giving space to others. But I do want this to be a conversation. So as long as we can be respectful to each other and, give others the opportunity to speak, I think that should be fine. Everyone who is on the call now, you are all panelists, so you should be able to unmute your line. John had, done a really great job of putting together some questions, but I think what we need to finalize is what is the objective, the goal of the meeting is what I said. Is everyone comfortable with that? And then also a question is if the meeting should be hybrid. There's a proposal to have the meeting both in person and online. So I think those are just two things that we need to hash out before we move forward.
So should we vote if we want it online or in person? I'm confused, I'm sorry.
I don't know, should we have a vote? I mean,
I prefer the hybrid myself because, really it's a lot easier for me to be in attendance.
yeah, Jeremy, have we had hybrid meetings in the past? I know that there was an executive board meeting that was hybrid.
We
And
haven't
the
had one
audio,
since. We haven't, I believe we resolved everything, but we haven't had any meetings yet as a hybrid.
I know I participated in one and there was audio issues. It was really hard to hear if folks weren't on the mic.
Yep, we brought in a contractor. I think we've resolved that.
Okay.
So Antoinette, can I just ask, as of now, there are no technical issues to having a hybrid meeting. We think it would work if that were to be done. I guess that's a question for Jeremy.
I believe so. I think that's something that should be discussed with the executive committee when we're starting that, but I believe there's nothing holding us back except mayor's order at this point.
Oh, there is a mayor's order that's preventing?
The last I was aware, there's still one we could have hybrid meetings, but we can't be all in person. We have not had a first hybrid meeting yet.
Okay. Well, I mean, I support hybrid meetings if it's allowed.
Yeah, same for me. I support it.
The only way I made this meeting is because I'm home with COVID.
We wouldn't have known it, Cynthia. You're providing all these great insights.
I know, but my husband is very, very sick and I've been in the hospital every single day until I got COVID. But today, I'm here.
Well,
I think for the ease of, I'm all for meeting and having a hybrid meeting, but as we saw today, there can be technical issues regardless. It really depends. If folks are committed to having a hybrid meeting, then we're just gonna have to make sure that we have folks committed to helping to troubleshoot any technical issues that might happen. And working in that way, or is it 2 weeks away? And if we want to just make it easier and just have this meeting be completely virtual, that's another option. But I'm open, sorry, it's 1, 2, 3 weeks away. So we have some proposals for hybrid, some for online only.
What is that?
I think it should be online only.
Hennessis, you think online only just because it's easier for everybody?
Yeah, especially, I mean, well, I do not expect any of the state legislators to be in person. That's one, because of the because session, right? It just, I don't think we have the capacity. That's my honest, response. I don't think we have the capacity in such a short notice. When we know, yeah, it's just capacity, that's all.
Yeah, I agree. Does anyone else have any other want to weigh in?
I think that's a great idea to have the virtual as well, because ultimately I think the goal is to have the biggest turnout. You know what I mean? So if we're gonna get the most turnout online or virtually, that probably might be the wisest decision to go in.
Okay. Anyone else we haven't heard from that wants to weigh in?
Yeah, I agree virtually because like myself, we're getting very busy at work with a new contract and we're also lobbying, and virtual is so that I could participate would be best so that I could do it. I was in 3 meetings today at the same time. So
Yeah.
Thank you for making the time. We're honored.
I think, I really think that, like, if it's a simpler meeting, where we don't have so many people invited to talk, it would be good to try it in person, or a hybrid. But at least we can have most of the speakers in person and just transmit that instead of having so many, because we're going to have so many candidates. It sounds like it's going to be chaotic.
Okay, Marcel, I'm sorry, Marcel. Maria, you have your hand raised? Did you want to weigh in on this? Maria, your line is muted. Okay, well, we'll get back to you, Maria. Jeremy, do we still have access to that poll feature? Can I do it? Should we just do a quick
It doesn't
poll?
look like it was set up tonight.
Gotcha. All right, no problem. So, sorry, we set up the poll actually for the last meeting to do some voting. So I'll make sure it's available as an option moving forward. Unfortunately, we don't have it as an option tonight. Does anyone feel very strongly about not having it as a virtual meeting? Can we move forward with setting this up virtually? Are people okay with that?
I'm okay with that. I think we can move forward.
Okay, all right, cool. And then okay, so we'll have this meeting virtually. Now, let's just confirm what the objective is. What I said before, is that in line with what people are expecting? I know I used the word town hall before, but I was speaking with Hennessis about this, and I think what we had talked about, what we described, maybe a roundtable discussion would be a better name to call it, where we invite I'm sorry, someone's line is some background noise. Someone can mute their line. Okay. Where we invite our electeds and we talk about
Right back. I'm on a meeting, honey. All right, bye.
Mute.
Sorry. Where we talk about what their housing proposals are. And then also give the public opportunity to ask questions, but frame it more as a roundtable. Is that in line with what folks were thinking? Are we okay with that moving forward, or is that drastically different from what other folks might have had in mind?
I'm okay with the roundtable.
Can you hear me now, guys? This is Maria
We can
Roca.
hear you now, Maria.
No, I'm having trouble with a pair of earphones that for somehow the connection to my cell phone is not very good. But anyway, I think a round table would be good. But one thing I've noticed, because we are always having gladly new people come on board, given the importance of the subject, is that I think there is a lack of background knowledge on the different programs and the different aspects of developing truly affordable housing. And I was wondering if anyone here, or a combination of people, or the electeds at least, had access to some kind of, I don't want to use the word dictionary, but primer as to programs like 421A, Section 8, the difference between, there's so many things, low income housing tax credits, so that people could, who are interested in this subject, who want to move the needle forward, come into the conversation with some good, solid background information. The development of affordable housing in New York City is complex. It was working well until the Reagan administration, and basically is the absence of the federal government, of government in general, to provide workforce housing for the working class and
Yeah,
lower
I hear-
middle class.
I
And
hear
so-
you. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Maria, but
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it's a wonderful idea. We have John Fontillis and Nick Azadian, who serve on the community board, who are both very well familiar with these. We can reach out to them to see if they have any knowledge of any resources that are currently available. And we can
Right, so,
also
yeah, right.
request that information from the electeds in advance of the meeting and
Right.
circulate that so that people can reference that before. Because I agree,
Right.
the more you know, the better questions you can ask.
Right, and
Yeah,
420, you just take 421A, for example. There is so much bad information out there on 421A. And also, what has it really accomplished? It sounds pretty when you read it, but the bottom line is that it doesn't provide. And,
Right.
Doesn't produce what they need, anywhere what the need is. And I think we need to educate the public. We need to educate people that are coming to this, late in the game, so to speak, because this is nothing new, the lack of affordable housing. There's nothing new about it. So I think that's a good place for us as a committee to, to go forward, because we're just I get the feeling we're just spinning our wheels here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Maria. I wasn't here at the last meeting, and it sounds like most of the attendees agree to have this meeting. Sorry, would you mind muting yourself, please? Yeah, I honestly think it will be my preference to not have this forum on the 28th. It will be my preference to instead do a series of education, right? Like Maria is proposing. Like people are talking about CLT, community land trust. What does that mean? What is 421? What is low income tax credits? What are the HUD subsidies, right? And then we go ready and have this panel with the elected officials so we can ask these questions. For example, these people that were presenting for their environmental, CEO, forgot their name, for the building on 22nd Street. It sounds like honestly, there's no accountability for the work they're doing. They're approving the permit and having this private contractor then report whatever they want, when it should be the opposite. They should clean up and then they get a permit, And I think we need to get educated and maybe come up with recommendations. Like I would like to revocate that, I'd like to change that at the city level. But yeah, that's just my proposal, because I think these elected officials are gonna come on the 28th and say the same thing that we can Google, right? You know, we can Google what is the TOPA, HAPP, which is great. Not everybody has the time and the privilege to do that. And it's good to listen to them and hear about it. But I don't know if that's the best use of our time when not everybody's at the same level of education. Some of us here on the committee have privilege to do that research and know about all this affordability program, but not most of us. That's just my stand, you know? But if we want to go forward with the 28th, I support it. I think, you know, we can use this space to draft better questions or deeper questions or select some of the questions that have been pre-provided. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you
I
for
have a
that,
question.
Genesis. I would advocate for having the roundtable with the electeds. I think it would give us an opportunity, one, to meet them and to understand what they're proposing. And you're right, we can look this up on our own, but a lot of times just hearing it and having it explained is a lot more helpful. And we can always go back and have these conversations and deeper dives into what's, you know, 421A. And I think we also have to work more with other committees like land use and pull them into this, because there's a lot of experts within that committee that can really help with framing and helping us understand that better, and, you know, building maybe a community primary, or maybe one already exists, and we just have to, you know, find it and put it in front of ourselves. But I mean, I don't think it hurts to meet with them on the 28th and start that conversation. I think, you know, everyone knows it's not something that I don't think anyone would not agree with, that we have a housing crisis here in Sunset Park. And I think, you know, starting that conversation will help influence other meetings. But okay, so I see a couple of hands are up. Alberto, John, and then Maria.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe, like, I guess a side suggestion, but is there any way that for our meeting on the 28th to somehow get like a roster of who is of these officials that might be showing up so we can know ahead of time? I think, like, for me personally, like, if I knew that, you know, my local assembly person or, you know, a certain person from, you know, Congress is going to be at this meeting, that'll give me the opportunity to kind of just do a little digging, you know, and say, okay, well, I know this person's coming. Let me see what their agenda is. Let me see what they're currently working on. And that'll give me a better way to, you know, create questions for the meeting.
100%. If we do move forward with this meeting on the 28th or at a later date, one thing that we have to come out of this committee is confirm, like, who is it that we want to invite, who we want to speak to, confirming with them that they're available, and then making sure that we're working to get that information out to the public. Another thing that we should also keep in mind is translation. So we can bring that up after, but John and then Maria.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, John, and I'm sorry to interrupt everybody. I just to move this forward, I think we should just have a vote that we want this meeting on the 28th. I'm sorry, somebody's getting arrested here. It sounds like most people want to have the meeting on the 28th, and if that's the case, we should just move to the next part of the agenda, which is choosing who are we going to invite and all of that stuff. That way we don't go back and forward debating who wanted or not.
All right, not a problem. So, Jeremy, we can take a vote. Is it okay if we take a vote from everyone who's on the line for this and not committee members?
Or people can just raise their hands if they want to move forward with this. It's up, you know, it's up to you because we guys already decided this.
We would always just raise our hands. It's easier.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Genesis, for always making things easier. I overcomplicate everything. All right, so if you're for this, moving forward, raise your hand.
So we're raising our hand if we say yes, February 28th meeting. We want to discuss the content of the meeting, right? That's why we're raising our hands.
If we want the panel on the 28th.
3, 4, 5. looks like we have 6. Yes, sorry, 1, 2.
Yeah, the majority wins. So yes, is going on the 28th. So we can move forward with the next part of the agenda, which is, okay, who are we inviting? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to move this a little faster. And I'll step back now. I talk a lot.
Genesis, you have any ideas on who to invite?
I mean, I think it's like, according to the notes from the last meeting, sounds like we want the state legislators. Although Sunset Fire has many state legislators, we have one assemblywoman, I think, Marcela, and then we have, I don't know if we want our senators too, Andrew Gordales, and what's her other name? The Asian lady, I forgot her name. Then we have, I don't know the answers, I'm sorry.
So last time at the meeting, we had talked about casting a broad net, inviting Marcella. Marcella confirmed that she's available, so we have that locked down. We can invite Alexa, Dan Goldman. Jeremy had also mentioned that there's a housing czar from HPD that is a city agency that could also be invited. And then I'm not sure if we also want to invite Ewen Chu or anyone else. Feel free to Gladys, did you want to weigh in?
Well, I agree with all those choices you made. I got to think of who else, but so far, yeah, I agree with everyone you said. That should be invited.
We can also try to reach out to Reynoso's office and have
Yeah, I think that would
someone
be great.
from Borough Hall.
Mhm.
Alberto, did you have any other ideas on who to invite?
Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking, is there any maybe like a nonprofit organization or some type of organization that can give us a little bit more background on, or just more information on like the benefits of workforce housing, maybe to kind of shed a little bit of light on, that balance between these corporations that are trying to take advantage of the 421A plan, at the same time, keeping in mind that, they're going to need this workforce. It's a benefit for them to do more workforce housing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we definitely do, but I think we also have to keep in mind the focus of this meeting. Sorry, someone has their line unmuted. If you could just mute your line. Yeah, I think, we could definitely do that too, and we can have a separate meeting where we're having a nonprofit coming in and talking about that specifically. But I think for this meeting, we should really just focus on having the elected officials in front of us, making sure that we're hearing them out and then asking questions and then planning how, to move forward from there. I think if we start inviting nonprofits, then I'm open to other ideas, but for me personally, I think it could just be a lot for one meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it would be good to invite the elected officials to talk about legislation and what is being proposed. And then we go ahead and do education about different programs, like for example, 421A, where we can invite a nonprofit and maybe a city agency to explain how that works. And then, maybe again, some people wanted to talk about COTs. We can invite the council member sponsoring the COT app, and also this nonprofit organization pushing for it, and maybe a nonprofit who's a COT, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we can plan it out at the next meeting. We can maybe hash out the rest of the meetings.
Would somebody recognize, this is Maria Roca, sorry to interrupt. I'd like to be recognized for just a couple of minutes.
Maria, you disappeared.
I guess people are unmuting themselves, so I think Elise has been raising her hand.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but before you're given the floor, I just want to recap. So for the meeting, so we're moving forward with a virtual meeting on the 28th, and we're going to move forward with inviting Marcella, who is already confirmed. We're going to reach out to Alexa's office, get Dan Goldman. I'm going to reach out to Jeremy to confirm the contact at HPD. We're going to reach out to Iwen Chu's office, to Lenny Chan's office, and to Reynoso. Can anyone drop in the chat, anyone else to invite, or is that list final? I don't want us to miss anyone. Okay. Very good. Now, Maria, I'm gonna give you the floor, but we just have to also confirm, just finalize really quickly the agenda for the meeting. So before I give you the floor, we talked about having a roundtable discussion. Did we want to send specific questions to these electeds before, or did we want to have an open conversation where they're able to explain their platform, and then we're asking questions and taking questions through the chat, you know, from people who are on the call? Or did we want something more structured? John went and he outlined a number of questions that we can send to the elected officials ahead of time. We can also send these questions in advance as well. Nothing stopping us from doing that, but I just wanted to see the direction that we wanted to go with this. Bobby Carroll. All right, thanks for adding these elected officials. Nardis, Carroll, okay.
I think Elise had her hand raised before.
John does too.
And then John also had their hand.
Sorry, it's really hard to facilitate a meeting and go through the
It's
chat.
okay.
Yeah, just unmute your line. It's fine. Let's just try to get through this. I just want to be, I want to acknowledge that John went through the trouble of drafting these questions. So Maria, go ahead, take the floor. I apologize.
Okay, can you guys hear me? And I apologize for the background noise. Our elected officials need to come prepared to answer all the questions about the different programs that not only are in place, but maybe have over the years have been in place and had worked well, particularly Goldman. Without federal money, we are nowhere. Otherwise, what we're gonna get is this 421A nonsense of a few apartments here and there that are way overpriced for the working class, for the workforce people. And if people are serious, and I mean our elected officials, they need to get themselves up and not just be conversant, but become experts in this topic. This is probably the one most serious issue in New York City right now. It affects everything else that happens in New York City. If people cannot have a secure, affordable roof over their head. And the next thing I want to say very quickly, I agree with Hennessy's and many other people I'm sure on this call. How can we, the cart is in front of the horse. How can we approve a site for a ULURP without knowing the degree of toxicity beneath the ground? Like what happened at 737 Fourth Avenue. That is totally absurd. Toxic down to the water table, toxicity, disruptors down to the water table. And then you're going to turn around and then do the song after money changes hands and a community board approves it. I don't understand. I understand why it happens, but that is a huge issue for us to talk about. That has to be stopped. How can people vote on something to go forward with something when they don't understand the hurdles ahead and what might be an impossible task ahead? That doesn't make any sense. What kind of government allows for that? So I'm going to stop right there. And I want you guys to think about this. And again, I will say, without federal money, we are going to continue with this nonsense. And we are never going to be able to build the workforce. Nobody's asking for free apartment. We're talking about affordability for the workforce. So all those people that were essential and continue to be essential, which is just make them feel nice. But when it comes down to be essential and to be respected, means that government is taking seriously and doing what it needs to do to be able for those essential people, nurses, teachers, to be able to stay in the city and afford living within a reasonable distance of their work.
Thank you, Maria. So, Antoinette, let me help a little. So, John, 1 minute or 30 seconds, and then we can review the questions and decide if we want those questions. Because it's about to be 9 p.m. So go ahead, John.
My suggestion is that we put questions in a document and we share the document and give people a chance to do any comment. I mean, I don't know if you need a formal vote on questions, but I think it would be more fair, especially because there are members that are not here, if they can look things over and go through the questions. If our point is to have questions that we're going to put to elected officials, in addition to having people have a chance to talk, I say let's just create a shared document. People can list whatever questions they want, and then we can have some procedure to approve. It could either be just an email to everybody. Do you have any problems with these questions? Yes, no. People could comment on the document. Or we could have an informal meeting.
Yes,
That's what I would support.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
If I could quickly comment, sorry, Hannah, since I know we're running out of time. My only issue with asking questions beforehand is that we haven't had a chance to flush out these questions, and they may be restricting the conversation a bit. I think if we're having a roundtable conversation and we're hearing from our electeds, we hear them out, we allocate a certain amount of time that each person speaks. We're casting a broad net. Right now, we have 9 folks that we're going to reach out to. Maybe not everyone will be available, but if everyone does confirm, that's 9 folks, and we'll give them 10 minutes each to talk, and then we'll make sure that at the end we're having questions, and it can be very informal. But I think here, we can review these questions, but I think these questions, asking them, is affordable housing in Sunset Park an issue? I don't think that's a question we need to ask them. It is an issue.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, Antoinette. Give me 1 second. I'm so sorry, John. We are going to finish this meeting soon. So I agree with you, John, very much. I do think, and I do agree with Antoinette as well. So I propose that we have a panel where every elected official talks about their, what is available right now to develop affordable housing and to sustain or maintain current affordable housing. And in addition to their new proposal that they may be having either at the city level and then the state and the federal level. What I suggest right now is that all of us in this meeting send questions to Antoinette and I and CC Jeremy and CB7, specific questions to what do you want to ask your councilwoman? What do you want to ask your state legislators? And what do you want to ask your, your state, the governor, I forgot, the other legislators, the city and the congressperson. And that way we have a pool of questions that can be asked. Also during the meeting, after they present, we're gonna have a Q&A so that the participants can also ask questions that have to be asked. That's my proposal so that we can move forward. And that way it's an open forum where everybody can ask questions. Schedule small questions. Some of these questions that are being presented on the screen are great questions, but I think it would be great to open the opportunity for more people to send questions. Specific questions, now that you know who is going to be at this meeting. And we can send an email as soon as we get confirmation. We can let everybody know who confirmed attendance. So far, Marcella confirmed. Hopefully we get Alexa and everybody else. You can raise your hand if you agree with this, or put in the chat if you have any other method. All right, so I vote to adjourn this meeting.
I don't think we're ready to adjourn. If you have to hop off, that's fine. I think we still have some more things to flush out. But
No problem. I'm just rushing. Mother train station.
no, I hear you.
Okay.
Let's take a quick vote. Are folks okay with moving forward with the suggestion that Hennessy's just proposed? Just raise your hand if you agree with that.
Can I offer one comment?
Sure.
I agree with what Hennis has said. I just want to say, like, I think that we should, if we're proposing questions, if we're all summarizing questions, I just want to say, like, I think that any question should be okay to ask, because especially because there are a lot of new elected officials for this community that have not really spoken to this issue before. Dan Goldman is the most obvious one. That's a massive change to have a new member of Congress representing this community. And I think it's important to give an opportunity for everybody to go on the record formally to say where they stand. And even using the word crisis, which is everybody who runs for office says we have an affordable housing crisis. A crisis is a crisis. It's not an inconvenience. It's not a little issue. It's a crisis. If people want to use language like that, they should use it on the record in public, because that necessitates some form of action and response. So I think it's important that as we ask questions, like, I think we should ask anything we want and try to get everybody on the record as much as possible.
I
agree,
John.
John.
And I think, sorry, Hennessy's, and I think, that's also how we're, the next conversation that I want to just hash out before we end the call, just two things. One, translation, we haven't talked about that. And then two, we need a letter to go out to folks. So we need to talk about like how we're framing this. So what's gonna be the title of this roundtable? Is it housing crisis in CV7 roundtable with elected officials? I mean, do we want to call it that? And then, and then we'll have like a little one sentence to sum up what this meeting is, because also it's how we're framing it.
Being that is a crisis, we should call it such.
I was thinking the same thing.
So are folks okay with that? So housing crisis, and we're opening it up. It's not only Sunset Park, right? CB in the Community Board 7, so that's the whole district.
Absolutely.
So housing crisis, and we're inviting you. We want to hear, we want to hear from you about this issue. And then can anyone, so there were a bunch of folks who said that they'd be able to help out. Can anyone help draft an email invite?
I'm happy to put my 2 cents in on that, even though I have been sort of absent from the, for personal reasons. But I love this idea. When you run for office, you need to know the ins and outs, be intimately familiar with the solutions to the problems of the area that you are looking to represent. And I don't get the feeling often for a long, long time, nothing to do with the people who are presently representing us, that there are too many knowledge gaps, and that is hurting us terribly. People need to be able to speak. Elected officials need to be able to address extemporaneously answer any questions on an issue like affordable housing for the working class and the lower middle class. I mean, really, that's it. And this is the kind of forum we want, is somebody who doesn't come with 2 or 3 pages and just repeats the same thing, and that's their only contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then also we haven't talked about translation. Jeremy, is there a contractor who we can have help with translation and use Zoom?
Yes, but it's quite expensive. And if you have a proposal, I would suggest putting it by Julio, and we have a discussion on it.
Or with the electeds, do you feel that's something they would be able to help provide with their offices? I'm not sure if you know offhand.
I don't know offhand.
Okay.
Antoinette, are you speaking about simultaneous translation?
Yeah, during the meeting.
I'm sorry, interpretation. Simultaneous interpretation, right? That's what we're
Correct.
talking about here. Okay. Just to clarify.
All right, so we'll circle back to translation. Before we end, can anyone help create a flyer? Any volunteers?
That's not my forte right now. I don't have the no, I don't have the
I think-
software
all right.
necessary for that.
All right. All right, that's fine. Thank you. So we'll try
I
to
think
get that out.
Sorry, doesn't CV7 usually do the flyer?
Yeah, but we have a bunch of people on the line. The committee was just trying to pull folks in to see if anybody would be able to take that on, but we can get that taken care of. All right, so before we, so it looks like we have a lot. John is gonna help draft an email. I'm gonna reach out to folks tomorrow, just like a email, save the date, letting them know that we'll have more information sent to them by the end of the week. Thank you, John, for helping to draft an email. Hennessy's made a suggestion on the title, Housing Crisis Solutions Roundtable, and we'll be focusing for Community Board 7. And yeah, I think we're good to go with that. Before we close for today, I did want to share something really quickly. There was an email that circulated from the 579 61st Street Tenants Association. And they're having a Zoom meeting on the 25th. I just wanted to throw it out there that this was going on in case there's any folks on the line that are interested in supporting anyone from the housing committee. It looks like they're fighting rent increases and a rent stabilized building. I'm gonna drop this in the chat. And thank you all for being on the call. And all right, looking forward to the 28th. Should we have a meeting before then? To touch base? All right. All right, thank you, everyone.
Can we have an informal meeting? Can we have just a Zoom call that's not an official CB7 meeting that's voluntary? Anybody who wants to chat can get together?
We can discuss, but I was more so talking about preparing for the 28th.
Right, I mean, can we have an informal Zoom call before the 28th? Like
Sure,
for anybody who's
if folks are interested, you are more you guys are more than able to meet and have meetings, but anything that's done the housing committee has to be done in public. So, and those are the resources from the Community Board 7 office. So if you notice, all our calls have Jeremy or another member of the CB7 office on the line. But if you want to talk about housing issues or whatever you want to have discussions on, you're more than welcome to have those conversations offline. But anything CB7 related, it has to be public. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone.
Antoinette, I'm sorry, but so is there going to be any more formal communication among committee members between now and the 28th? Like, is there any way of sharing information? Is there, I don't mean to launch a whole new topic here, but information sharing, email list, Google group, shared documents. Is there any way for us to communicate officially between now and that meeting?
John, I suggested that everybody can email, and I said email Antoinette, and also Jeremy and CB7, so that way we can continue communication, especially regarding the forum and the questions that we want to ask or any other suggestion. And I think the meeting in March should be a planning meeting so we can hash out some of the other topics that we want to focus on for the rest of the next 6 months or for the rest of the year, however we decide to do it. But I think, I think we should have a meeting just for that.
Yeah, I agree, especially since folks hop in and out of these meetings. So it'll be good just to recognize like a core group so that we can have these issues, address all these issues going forward. And if not, then those issues can be addressed during these committee meetings with everyone. But okay, more to come. So looks like we're good for the meeting on the 28th. Thank you so much. Sorry, this meeting was almost 3 hours long. Have a good night. Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night and thank you.